carried away and comment on something. Okay, chapter 14. A pain in the neck. Daniel woke up on Thursday morning feeling more confused than ever. All through the night he had dreams of getting a rank on the big board. But in the dreams he only saw his name in lights up on the big board. He not only saw his name in lights up on the big board, he also saw himself trapped inside the big board. The boy had woken up in a sweat twice. He figured it was all just a dream. He still planned to go see Mrs. Happy as he got ready for breakfast. Daniel limped downstairs slowly. His mother and sister were already at the kitchen table. "We should be getting a big board at the factory today," Mrs. Bailey said after finishing her cup of coffee. "Do people at the factory have number cards too?" Denise asked. "Mr. Cutright said they'll be processed right away," her mother replied. "Mr. Faber, the new manager, has used the point system before and says it's a great management tool. He says it keeps people on their toes and working hard. That's good for everyone in these times." "I wonder what's going to happen since everything is such a mess in the government," Denise said. "Everyone I know has been acting different since the bank closed and people got scared. People aren't as friendly." "They're just worried," her mother explained. "It's natural to feel more stress in times like these, but don't you children worry. We'll ride this out." Her mother left the table. Daniel ate slowly and finished by himself. Mrs. Jenkins came just as his mother left for the factory. She brought a shopping bag with her knitting in it. The mail carrier left the mail a half hour later. Daniel went outside to get it. Most of the mail was for his mother. Denise rushed over and grabbed a fashion magazine called Pretty You out of Daniel's hands. She had a 2-year subscription and was a loyal reader of the makeup tips, fashion news, and beauty comments. "How come you read that stupid magazine?" Daniel asked. "You're only 10 years old." "You're never too young to look pretty," Denise said, quoting the magazine's motto. "And that's the truth. Did you know that Wanda Bishop got a big red pimple on the end of her nose this week and went down 4 ranks? We all saw her score in black and white on the point breakdown printout sheet. There were big red negative points under the areas of face, for nose, and skin blemishes." "All because of a pimple?" Daniel asked. "Well, it looked all red and awful and sort of oozed," Denise replied. "If she had used makeup, she could have kept her points, if you ask me, but that one pimple dropped her down 102 and 2 rank." Yippee-ki-yay. "That means she lost her invitation to the top 100 party that Cindy and Craig are giving. That's just what one pimple can do. I hate to think what would happen if her whole face broke out." Daniel shook his head, amazed that so much trouble could be caused by a single pimple. The boy rubbed his chin, feeling for any bumps. Feeling safer when he didn't find any, he sorted through the rest of the mail. On the bottom of the pile was a letter addressed to him. There was no name or return address on the outside of the letter. The postmark was from the Centerville post office. "Who wrote you?" Denise asked curiously. "I don't know," Daniel said. He was about to open the letter when he thought maybe he should read it in private. He left the mail on the table and limped upstairs. He closed the door of his room and ripped open the letter. He was surprised to see the letter was from Susan Kramer. He began reading it slowly. "Dear Daniel, I know your mother doesn't want you to see us, and it's probably because we have Spirit Flyer bicycles. I don't want to get you in trouble, so I'm writing this letter to fill you in on recent developments. As you know, a lot of stuff is happening in Centerville and doesn't look good. The big board and point system are just the beginning of something worse to come, we think. To make a long story short, John and I were warned by 2 different sources to beware of a coming deeper attack on Centerville. The evening we came to your house, we were trying to warn you and get you to help us fight back. We need more power. That night, the attack came in a great cloud of smoke that came from the Goliath factory. Something was in the smoke, something awful. It's hard to explain, and I don't know if you'd believe me even if I tried. You needed to see it, but believe me, people are acting more afraid and weird, not only because the point system is working, but for other reasons too. The shadow over Centerville just gets worse and worse. You said you had Spirit Flyer vision goggles. If you can, go out in the town and put them on. Look at people while wearing the goggles. The goggles may show you some of the deeper stuff we've been seeing, and then you'll understand. Please, if at all possible, do this as soon as you get this letter. Don't forget to look in the rearview mirror. We will be leaving today to visit our grandfather Kramer. He may know more about how to fight the point system and all the things that have a deeper way. Your friend in the kingdom, Susan Kramer." Daniel read the letter 3 times, then he opened his closet door and got out an old locked wooden box. He opened the lock and lifted the lid. The Spirit Flyer vision goggles were lying near the top. He dropped the letter in the box and locked it. He stuffed the goggles under his shirt and went downstairs. Denise was showing Mrs. Jenkins some of the face creams and makeup she wanted in the advertisements of Pretty You magazine. I'm going out for a while, Daniel said. Be back for lunch, Mrs. Jenkins said. Daniel went in the garage. He looked at both bicycles. He wanted to ride the Spirit Flyer, but when he made a move for it, he felt a sudden stab of pain in his neck. He rubbed his neck slowly and decided he didn't need the old bike or the new one. He would just take the goggles. He walked quickly, not even thinking about his limp. He headed downtown on 10th Street as he usually did. As he got to the town square, he crossed the street to the middle of the square. The old bandstand was empty, so Daniel quickly walked up the steps. He stood near one of the wooden pillars that held up the gazebo-style roof. He took a deep breath and carefully took the goggles from underneath his shirt. He looked around to see if anyone was watching, and he quickly slipped the goggles on. At first he could see nothing but darkness, as if the glass wasn't clear at all, like a dark welder's mask. Please work, I need you, Daniel said softly to himself. He had hardly ever used the goggles, and each time he had, they had worked differently. He knew that you couldn't make them work. All you could do was put them on and ask the kings to release their power in them so you could see. Then the town suddenly came into focus out of the darkness. Daniel paid attention. The first thing he noticed was a shadowy darkness seemed especially dark over the bank, almost like a storm cloud. A man came out of the bank across the square and began walking toward the bandstand. As he got closer, Daniel saw a great dark thing on the man. The boy blinked and looked again. The man was still walking closer. This time Daniel saw the dark thing more clearly, but he found it hard to believe what he saw. Daniel lifted up the goggles and rubbed his eyes. He looked at the man with normal eyes and slipped the goggles back on. Then he lifted them up again, comparing what he saw. They Live. If you haven't seen that movie, you got to watch it. Without the goggles, the man seemed just to be normal. He looked worried and preoccupied, but that wasn't unusual around town anymore. But seeing deeper through the Spirit Flyer goggles, he saw a different sight. A great dark thing was wrapped around the man's neck and down his chest. As the man got closer, Daniel saw the darkness more clearly. The chain, Daniel whispered to himself. Then he looked deeper at the man. There's something else attached. The man walked right in front of Daniel. From behind, the boy could see more clearly. A sort of vibrating red spot was on the back of the man's head, like a sore about the diameter of a softball. Right in the middle of it was the head of a black snake. The snake's mouth was clamped down into the flesh, like a leech. The body of the snake was tightly wrapped in and around the chain. Only the tail wiggled slightly at each step. Daniel gasped and ripped off the glasses. The man looked normal again. Daniel was wondering about what he had seen when a woman crossed the street and walked toward the bandstand. Daniel slipped the goggles back on. The darkness on the woman was even heavier. As she passed by, Daniel saw why. Three of the leech-like snakes were attached to a red plates in the back of her neck and head. Each snake was slightly different size. One was as thick as a pencil, about a foot long. Another was about the size of a garden hose and 3 feet long. And the third one was much bigger, about big around Daniel's arm. It was wrapped around the woman's neck and into the chain and was squeezed around her body like a boa constrictor. As the woman passed in front of Daniel, the biggest snake stopped biting. Daniel felt uneasy. The big snake turned and spread its head like a cobra as it stared straight at Daniel. A white X was inside the white circle on the snake's throat. The snake hissed at Daniel. Just then the woman stopped walking. She paused and turned to look at Daniel. What are you doing to that bandstand? The woman asked angrily. Nothing, Daniel said with surprise. He pulled the goggles off quickly. I think I saw you cutting it with a pen, not a pocket knife, the woman replied. There's a law against vandalizing public property. Did you know that? I wasn't doing anything, Daniel replied, his face turning red. The woman's bizarre behavior had caught him completely off guard. You're one of those new boys in town, aren't you? The woman asked. You better learn how to do things in Centerville, or we'll fix you. Ooh. Totally demon-possessed. Controlled. With that, the woman turned and walked on down the sidewalk. Daniel was too overwhelmed to do anything but watch her leave. With some hesitation, he put the goggles back on. The big snake kept staring at him as the woman walked away. But as she crossed the street On the other side of the town square, it seemed to have latched back into the raw red splotch with the other snakes. Daniel heard a noise and saw a group of younger children riding by on bicycles on the sidewalk across the center of the square. He watched them carefully. He saw the heavy, loose chains around their necks. They passed by him. As they passed by him, he saw more of the black snakes attached to the ugly red patches at the backs of their heads. All the children had at least one of the snakes hanging on like a parasite, and some had two. Daniel took off the goggles and looked at the children. They appeared to be normal as any other person. Daniel looked down Main Street and saw the Happy Toy sign blinking on and off in purple neon. He remembered he had planned to meet with the old woman. Daniel walked quickly down the steps of the bandstand, stuffing the goggles under his shirt. Using the goggles had shown him something but he wasn't sure what it all meant. He wished he could talk to Susan. She somehow seemed to know more about the things of the Spirit Flyer. Just then, the purple neon sign of the Happy Toys caught the boy's eye. He stared at the blinking sign. For a moment, he was about to put the goggles back on to look at the store, but he felt a sudden pain in the back of his neck. While he rubbed his neck, he remembered that he had intended to go see Mrs. Happy. It won't hurt to see what she has to say, Daniel said to himself. He began walking toward the toy store almost mindlessly. As he walked, he tried to think about what he had just seen in the goggles. Yet as he tried to concentrate, he got a nagging ache in the back of his neck. He felt more confused as he walked. He stopped in front of the big glass windows of the toy store, right below the buzzing, blinking sign. A great wave of fear came over the boy for a moment. For an instant, he just wanted to run away as fast as he could go, but as he turned to go, he felt another jolt of pain in his neck. He stopped to pause and rub his neck again. That's when he looked through the toy store window and saw the big board. Daniel forgot his fear and the pain in his body as he stared at the mysterious dark panel. Maybe I'll just look at it with the goggles, he said to himself. He quickly opened the door and stepped into the cool, air-conditioned toy store. Daniel walked quietly toward the big board. He stopped when he got in front of it. He touched the goggles underneath his shirt. At that moment, he realized that deep inside, he wasn't sure he intended to use the goggles at all. What he really wanted was to see whether or not he had finally earned a rank. Once again, the fears of facing an unknown judgment gripped the boy. He wanted to run, but as he turned, he bumped right into Mrs. Happy. Daniel almost screamed. What seemed like she had disappeared out of thin air. Probably did. "Excuse me," he gasped. His whole body was shaking. A severe pain shot through his neck. "I've been expecting you," the old woman said with a smile. "The big board has been waiting too." Daniel nodded, trying to catch his breath. The old woman chuckled as she gently patted the top of his head. If you don't think that this is a fairly accurate picture of what's going on in the world with people in your life, people in my life, you're sadly mistaken. People are under demonic influence and growing demonic influence. And I'm just saying that's a fact. I see it every day. Whether you think of them as snakes biting into their head, a bald red spot on their head, or demonic influence, same difference. That's what these things are, demons. Look how it's spelt in Greek in the New Testament. I'm not going to say it that way. Anyway, think about it. Consider the people that are in your life. I'm talking to a friend today down in Texas, and demonic influence there. Yeah. When people scream and yell and they're repeating the words in their head that are really loud, that is demonic influence. It used to be cartoons, they'd have a good angel on the left and a bad angel on the right, a little white angel on here and a red angel with horns and a pitchfork on this side. This one had a halo, and they would talk back and forth, do this, no, do this. Be humble. No, don't be a fool. Be angry. It's happening, people. And it's getting worse. It's going to get worse. It's going to continue to get worse. It's going to get more intense. Deal with it. All right, good night. Bye-bye. Pasta lasagna, everybody.